The day humanity was exiled, the galaxy called it peace. Across 1,000 worlds, celebration lights burned through the night as the fleets of Earth and her colonies were driven beyond the mapped stars. The Galactic Council declared humans too dangerous to remain among civilized species. They said humanity was aggressive where others were calm, emotional where others were rational, reckless where others were measured. Wherever humans settled, borders changed, industries accelerated, and wars ended with brutal speed. To the Council, that kind of power looked less like protection and more like a threat. Many species had quietly depended on humans for generations. Human engineers repaired failing worlds in months. Human merchants opened routes no one else would risk. Human soldiers won battles others could not stomach fighting. But gratitude fades quickly when envy grows. As humanity's influence expanded, resentment spread through the council chambers. Then came the perfect excuse. A mining moon exploded near a contested sector, destroying fleets and stations from 3 member species. Before the debris had cooled, evidence appeared linking the sabotage to human commanders. Trials were rushed. Votes were unanimous. Humanity was blamed for a crime it did not commit. Their colonies were seized. Their embassies were emptied. Their names were stripped from public records. Massive escort armadas forced refugee convoys toward the Galactic Rim, where charts ended and survival was considered impossible. The Council called it mercy. Yet the human fleets did not beg, riot, or break formation. They moved in silence, carrying archives, machines, seeds, children, and everything they could save. Civilian ships were shielded by warships that knew they would never return. Entire populations vanished into the dark beyond known space without firing a single shot. From the Council's towers, it looked like the end of a problem. From the last human vessel crossing the rim, it looked like the beginning of something else. Because while the galaxy celebrated comfort, humanity carried with them the one thing exile could never strip away: the will to survive. Centuries after humanity vanished beyond the rim, the galaxy had everything it once claimed to want. The Council's worlds were orderly, prosperous, and quiet. Wars became historical exhibits. Borders froze in place. Automated systems managed transport, agriculture, medicine, and defense with flawless precision. Citizens lived longer than any generation before them. Crime fell. Productivity rose. To most of the galaxy, exile had worked. But peace without pressure became decay. Innovation slowed first. Without humans pushing reckless ideas, no one tested dangerous engines, radical medicine, or unstable energy theories. Research councils approved only safe projects with predictable outcomes. Breakthroughs became upgrades. Great shipyards produced polished versions of vessels designed centuries earlier. Entire civilizations became caretakers of inherited success. Then the fleets weakened. Navies still existed, but mostly for ceremony, piracy patrols, and political display. Admirals trained for simulations built on old wars. Weapons systems were optimized for known threats. Commanders learned procedure instead of adaptation. No one believed a real enemy remained. Then colonies at the edge of charted space went silent. At first, the Council blamed storms, malfunction, local revolt. Then trade convoys disappeared along stable routes. Listening stations transmitted fractured signals of impossible vessels and weapons that changed form mid-battle. Rescue forces sent to investigate never returned. Panic spread when the first shattered defense fleet drifted back into core space. Its hull had been opened like paper. Data cores were missing. Survivors spoke of enemies that learned from every attack, reshaping armor against each weapon used on them. Laser volleys failed after one strike. Missiles were intercepted after the first launch. Shield frequencies became useless within minutes. The Council responded the only way it knew how: committees, votes, jurisdiction disputes, delayed mobilization. World after world fell while leaders debated protocol. Buried archives were finally opened in desperation. Inside them was a pattern too clear to ignore. Every major extinction threat, border swarm, machine uprising, and pirate empire in recorded history had one constant factor in its defeat: human intervention. For the first time in centuries, the council chambers spoke humanity's name not with contempt, but with need. With core systems collapsing, the Galactic Council sent an expedition beyond the Forbidden Rim. No species volunteered proudly. The mission was born from desperation. Their fleets were damaged, their colonies burning, their confidence shattered. Still, they believed they knew what waited in exile. Ruins. Scattered descendants. Bitter survivors clinging to forgotten stations. Instead, they found an empire of stars. Past the rim, regions once marked uninhabitable blazed with human habitation. Dead systems had been reignited by engineered suns. Frozen planets carried oceans beneath climate shields. Asteroid belts had become cities of steel and light. Trade lanes stretched through hazards no council navigator had ever dared cross. Humanity had not hidden in darkness. They had mastered it. The first human ships to appear were larger than council dreadnoughts, and scarred by hard service. Their hulls showed no decorative plating, no ceremonial design, no wasted space. Every surface carried purpose: armor, weapons, sensors, cargo systems, repair docks. Engines burned with controlled power signatures the council could barely measure. These were not peace fleets. They were survival fleets. Exile had erased old divisions faster than diplomacy ever could. Nations that once fought on Earth had merged out of necessity. Colony rivalries had vanished under harsher realities. Every resource mattered. Every citizen mattered. Failure meant extinction, so humanity adapted until adaptation became culture. Their science followed the same rule. Council technology had become elegant but stagnant. Human technology was relentless. Machines were built to repair themselves, weapons to evolve, habitats to thrive anywhere. If nature resisted, humans studied it. If physics resisted, humans tested harder. By the time the council delegation reached the first orbital port, human authorities were already waiting. They knew the invaders' tactics. They knew which council systems had fallen. They even knew the political arguments still delaying action back home. Long-range intelligence networks had watched the old galaxy for generations. And they had preserved everything. Records of betrayal. Footage of the exile convoys. Names of those who voted them out. But beside those archives were older records too. Maps they once built, worlds they once defended, allies they once saved. Now the species cast into darkness had to decide whether the civilization that abandoned them deserved the light again. While the council argued over apologies, the enemy reached the core worlds. Defense rings that had guarded capitals for centuries were torn apart in hours. Orbital stations burned above planets that had never known war. Refugee lanes clogged with civilian ships as governments collapsed into emergency broadcasts and failed commands. The same leaders who once voted to erase humanity now begged for time they no longer had. They did not get time. They got humanity. Without announcement, thousands of human vessels emerged across contested systems in perfect formation. Carriers, siege ships, interceptor swarms, hospital fleets, evacuation barges, every class moved with disciplined speed. No speeches were delivered. No demands were made. Humanity entered battle the way it had entered exile, silent and decisive. The invaders adapted as they always had, reshaping defenses after each strike. Human commanders expected it. First attacks tested reactions. Second waves exploited patterns. Third waves changed weapons entirely. Drone clouds forced enemy shields wide, kinetic salvos shattered exposed cores, electronic warfare blinded their coordination. Where machines learned, humans learned faster. But their greatest priority was not destruction. It was rescue. Human fleets broke blockades to clear civilian corridors. Medical ships entered active combat zones to recover the wounded. Engineers restored power grids before planets froze. Transport crews evacuated species that had once celebrated humanity's banishment without hesitation. Billions survived because humans refused to measure worth by old grudges. Within days, the enemy offensive collapsed. Remaining forces were trapped behind artificial singularity nets and driven back into the dark regions they had come from. For the first time since the war began, the galaxy was quiet again. The Council offered everything: full reinstatement, permanent leadership, wealth, reparations, command of united fleets. Humanity refused the throne. They agreed only to an alliance built on new law. No species would ever be erased by fear again, no civilization would trade readiness for comfort, and power would exist to protect, not dominate. The galaxy had exiled humanity for being aggressive, emotional, and stubborn. In the end, those were the exact traits that saved it.